He had been lying still for 3 days. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to hear the truth. My name is Andre. I am 38 years old. I own a construction and real estate company that my father started, and I spent 15 years building into something neither of us could have imagined when we were still pouring concrete ourselves. I have a penthouse apartment, 3 cars, and more money in various accounts than I will ever need in one lifetime. I also have, or had, a habit of trusting the wrong people and not trusting the right ones. The accident was real. I want to be clear about that. A car had run a red light on a Tuesday morning and hit the passenger side of my vehicle hard enough to send me into a concrete barrier. I had been taken to the hospital with a concussion, 2 bruised ribs, and a laceration on my left arm that needed 12 stitches. The doctors said I needed rest and observation for several days. They were concerned about the concussion. They wanted to monitor brain activity and watch for complications. So I was admitted. I was given a private room on the 4th floor. I had monitors attached to me, and 4 in my arm, and a bed that adjusted 17 different ways. By the end of the first day, I was feeling significantly better. The headache had dulled. My thoughts were clear. The doctors came and checked and said things were looking better, but they wanted to keep me 1 more day at least. It was during that first evening that I heard 2 of my business associates talking in the hallway outside my room. They did not know I was awake. They spoke in low voices, but the door was not fully closed, and I heard enough. They were discussing what would happen to certain company decisions if I remained incapacitated for an extended period. They were discussing names. Votes. A board meeting that I had not been informed was being considered. They were not wishing me well. They were calculating. I said nothing. I closed my eyes when the nurse came to check on me. I made a decision. I would stay still. I would let people believe I was worse than I was. Not to deceive my doctors, I told myself, but to listen. To finally hear what people said when they believed no one important was paying attention. It was a foolish idea. I know that now. But at the time it felt like the only honest experiment I had access to. More associates came and went over the next 2 days. A lawyer who spoke to someone on his phone outside my door about timelines. A cousin I had not seen in 2 years who asked the nurse 3 questions about my condition and then asked 1 question about my will. I lay still through all of it with my eyes closed and my hands flat at my sides, and I felt something cold and clarifying move through me. But then there was Dr. Natasha. She was not the doctor assigned to my case. She was a resident, doing her rounds, covering the floor during the overnight shifts. She was in her early 30s, with long dark wavy hair and grey-green eyes that had the particular steadiness of someone who had learned to stay calm in rooms where other people panicked. She wore blue scrubs under her white coat and a small silver necklace that caught the light when she leaned forward to check a monitor. She came in every morning just before 6 and every evening around 9. She was thorough and quiet. She spoke to me even though she believed I could not respond, the way some medical professionals do, narrating small actions, explaining what she was checking, treating the room as if its occupant was still fully present and deserving of information. I liked that about her immediately, even before anything else. On the 3rd evening, she came in at her usual time. She checked my monitors, adjusted something on the 4 stand, and then did something she had not done before. She sat down in the chair beside my bed. Not for long. Just for a moment, the way someone sits when they are tired in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. She was quiet for a while. I kept my breathing steady. My eyes stayed closed. Then she spoke. Not loudly. Just the way a person speaks when they are alone with their own thoughts and the room feels safe enough to let them out. She said she had read my file. She said she knew who I was, that most of the staff did, that having someone like me on the floor created a certain kind of tension between genuine care and performance. She said she hoped the care she had given me had been the genuine kind, because she did not know how to do it any other way. Then she paused. She said she had grown up in a neighborhood that one of my company's developments had displaced when she was 12 years old. She said her family had rented a small house on a street that no longer existed, replaced by a commercial complex. She said she did not say this with anger, that she had made her peace with it a long time ago, that the world moved in the directions money pointed, and that was not entirely any one person's fault. But she said it because she wanted to say something honest in a room that had received mostly careful and managed things since I had arrived. She said that despite all of that, she would care for me exactly the same as she would care for anyone. That was the job. That was the point. That a person's worth in her room was not attached to what they owned or what they had done. It was just a person who needed care, and she was someone who knew how to give it. She stood up. She checked one more monitor. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, that she hoped when I woke up fully I would be the kind of man who deserved the second chance a car accident sometimes quietly gives a person. Then she left. I lay in the dark for a long time after that. In the morning, when she came in just before 6, I was sitting up in bed for the first time. She stopped in the doorway for just a moment, a small controlled pause, and then came in and proceeded with her checks the same as always. I told her I had been awake for most of the last 2 days. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said she had wondered. She said my breathing pattern had been inconsistent for someone in the condition the monitors described. I told her I had heard what she said the night before. All of it. She looked at me directly, the way she always did, without flinching. She asked if I was going to report her for inappropriate conduct. I told her no. I told her it was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in longer than I could remember. I told her the part about the neighborhood, that I had not known, that I had never known the names of the streets or the families, that the developments were numbers and projections to me, and I had never stood on the ground and understood what the ground had held before we changed it. She said that was the problem with decisions made from a distance. I said she was right. We were quiet together for a moment. The monitors beeped softly. The early morning light was coming through the window in long pale strips. I told her I did not know how to undo what had already been built. But I asked her if she would be willing to tell me more, not that day, not in the hospital, but sometime when we were both in a context that was not this one. I told her I had a foundation attached to my company that had never done very much, that I had started it years ago for reasons that were mostly tax-related and had never given it real direction. I said I did not know if that was something that could mean anything, but that I would like to find out with someone who understood what was actually needed on the ground. She looked at me for a long moment. She was measuring something, I could tell. Not my wealth or my intentions, but something harder to name. Whether I was real. Then she said she finished her rotation at the end of the month and that she would think about it. 3 months later, Natasha joined the board of what became the Molotova Foundation, named after no one in particular at first and then quietly named in honor of her grandmother who had raised her after her parents left. The foundation focused on affordable housing transitions and community relocation support, small work, careful work, the kind that does not make headlines but changes the specific gravity of specific streets. I visited one of the sites on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after the accident. I stood on actual ground. I watched actual people. I stayed for 4 hours and did not check my phone once. On the drive back, I thought about a man lying still in a hospital bed, listening for the truth in a room full of people who assumed he could not hear. And I thought about how strange it was that the only true thing spoken in those 3 days had come from someone who had every reason to say nothing kind at all. The second chance does not always arrive as something obvious. Sometimes it arrives as a concussion and a quiet voice in the dark and a question about whether you are finally ready to deserve the life you have been living. If you have been lying still, waiting to hear something real, maybe it is time to sit up. The truth has probably already been spoken. The only question is whether you were listening.